The view from the command deck of the Starfong wasn't beautiful. It was a scar carved into the universe. Below the ship, the planet Kuros Vale rolled slowly in silence. An enormous sphere of fractured black glass, wrapped in toxic storms that bruised the atmosphere in violent purples and sickly ochres. It looked less like a world and more like a corpse the galaxy had forgotten to bury. Admiral Rhea Solarin stood at the main viewport with her hands folded behind her back. Posture perfect, expression unreadable. She was Feli, the rare feline-blooded species known for elegance and instinct. Her ears tapered to sharp points. Her eyes were amber slits, always calculating. Even her tail, usually the first traitor to her emotions, remained still against the dark fabric of her uniform. On her chest, metals caught the bridge light like cold stars, proof she'd survived battles most officers only studied. But survival didn't mean safety. Rhea's career was hanging by a thread. One wrong decision, one misfiled report, and she would be buried under paperwork, stripped of command, and remembered as another officer who failed under pressure. That was why this mission mattered. A clean survey, a simple designation, quiet win. "Report," Rhea said, her voice sharp enough to cut through the hum of the ship. At the sensory station, Dr. Seinville Soren adjusted his spectacles and stared at the streaming data like it offended him. He was human, older, hair graying in defiance of military regulation. His fingers tapped the glass interface, bringing up graphs and readings that poured down like waterfalls. "Atmospheric composition is lethal," Soren said. "Sulfur compounds, heavy metals, toxic aerosols. Surface temperature fluctuates 40 degrees every hour. Gravity readings are inconsistent, likely heavy metal density shifts in the crust." He paused, eyes narrowing. "And the bioscanners are clean, Admiral. Cleaner than clean." Rhea's gaze didn't leave the planet. "Explain." Soren swallowed. "No microbial activity. No organic heat signatures. No carbon trace. We've scanned 3 continents. Penetrated the cloud layer with thermal imaging. There is nothing down there but wind and glass." A silence spread across the bridge. Heavy, careful. Pilot Cass Wren, usually quick with jokes even during engine failures, glanced over his shoulder. "So it's really dead?" "Statistical probability of sapient life," Soren said, "is 0.00%. Rhea exhaled slowly. It should have been a relief. The Orphan Accord had strict protocols. If there was life, anything that could evolve into life, then interference was forbidden. It meant hearings, investigations, decades of bureaucratic delay. But if the world was dead, then it was simply a hazard. A Class 15 Deathworld. Mark it, log it, leave it behind. Rhea stepped to the central command pedestal. The holographic interface bloomed to life, projecting a rotating model of Kuros Vale in cold blue light. "Log entry," she ordered. "Kuros Vale designated Class 15. No life, no potential. Restricted entry due to environmental instability." She pressed her palm to the authentication plate. The system chimed, a cheerful sound that felt wrong against the image of a dead world. "Designation accepted," the ship's computer announced. Rhea's shoulders loosened for the first time since entering orbit. "Clean. By the book. Perfect." Then the main screen flashed crimson. A new message overrode the navigational chart, pulsing with aggressive urgency. "Null mark accepted. Orphan Protocol 479. Active sterilization. Rights granted." The bridge went silent so fast it felt like someone had sucked the oxygen out of the room. Cass slowly turned. "Sterilization, rights?" Rhea's ears flattened before she forced them upright. "I did not request sterilization." Soren's hands flew over the console. His voice rose. "The system did it automatically. The High Council passed an amendment last month. Any Class 15 world designated no life becomes eligible for immediate terraforming preparation." "Terraforming preparation?" Cass echoed. Soren's mouth tightened. "Orbital bombardment. Flatten the crust. Make it useful." Rhea stared at the planet again, and for the first time it didn't look dead. It looked like a trap, and it felt like someone had been waiting for her signature. For a moment, Admiral Rhea Solarin didn't move. The crimson warning on the main screen kept pulsing like a wound that refused to close. Active sterilization. Rights granted. It wasn't just an order. It was permission for machines and fleets to erase an entire planet without asking questions. And the worst part was the line at the top. Null mark accepted. Her signature had become a trigger. Rhea's jaw tightened until her teeth ached. Lock the designation log. Freeze all outgoing packets. Dr. Soren's fingers danced across the glass console, but his confidence faltered. Admiral, the Accord system already transmitted the classification. It's out there. Sealed. Cass's voice came out low. So, we just marked a world for orbital flattening. Rhea turned slowly, eyes like molten amber. We marked a dead world. Her voice was calm, but the bridge crew could hear the steel under it. She was trying to convince them or herself. Then the tactical officer's chair snapped around. Admiral, he said sharply. Proximity alert. Rhea's ears twitched. Explain. The tactical display zoomed in on the ship's exterior. At first it showed nothing but the shimmering curve of hull plating. Then a tiny red indicator blinked. Contact, the officer said. It's attached to us. Cass blinked. A mine. No explosive signature. A drone. It's too small. Rhea's tail flicked once, betraying her irritation. Then what is it? The officer swallowed. It's clamped to the starboard airlock. Rhea stared. We're in the upper atmosphere. Yes, Admiral. Nothing survives outside shielding. The tactical officer's voice dropped, almost embarrassed by the words. It's knocking. The bridge went still again. Cass turned slowly, as if the universe might change its mind if he moved too fast. Did you say, knocking? The tactical feed picked up the sound through hull vibration sensors, dull, rhythmic impacts against the outer hatch. Not random, not frantic, deliberate, like someone trying to be polite while committing an impossible act. Rhea reached for her sidearm without thinking, checking the charge pack out of habit. Security Squad 1 to the starboard airlock. Full armor. Non-lethal priority until threat confirmed. Cass's mouth went dry. Non-lethal? Admiral, it could be a hostile. It is either hostile, Rhea cut in, or it is a miracle. And I want it alive long enough to explain itself. The corridor to the starboard airlock was sterile and bright, lit by white strips that made everything look clinical. For Fallery soldiers arrived first, towering in kinetic dampening armor, rifles raised. Their helmets reflected Rhea's rank insignia in distorted curves. Rhea stood behind them, calm and controlled. Dr. Soren hovered at her side with a handheld scanner, his hands trembling slightly despite his attempts to hide it. The airlock hissed as pressure equalized. Outer door sealed, the ship announced. Inner door cycling. Hydraulics groaned. Steam vented in a thick cloud, briefly hiding whatever waited on the other side. Rhea narrowed her eyes, pupils constricting into razor-thin slits. She expected a commando in a void suit, a rival faction, pirate, a sabotage unit. The steam cleared. Standing in the center of the airlock was not a soldier. It was a child, small, thin, maybe 12 years old. She wore a patchwork survival suit that looked like it had been stitched together from the corpses of 10 different machines. Rusted ceramic plates over the chest. Oversized boots wrapped in thermal tape. A bulky humming device on her back fed into a mask covering the lower half of her face. A filtration unit built from spare engine parts and stubbornness. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then the girl calmly reached up, unclipped her mask, and pulled it away. It hissed as it detached, revealing a face smudged with grease and soot. Pale skin that had seen too little sun. Sharp chin. Eyes that were too intelligent to belong to someone that young. She looked at the rifles pointed at her chest, then at the armored soldiers, then finally at Rhea. And she didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She simply wiped her nose with the back of her glove like she was annoyed she'd been interrupted. Then she spoke, voice rough but steady. So, she said, you're the one who signed the sky to kill us. Rhea felt cold spread through her ribs. Lower your weapons, she ordered. The squad leader hesitated. Admiral, unknown entity. It's a child, Rhea snapped. Lower them. The rifles lowered, though every soldier kept their finger close to the trigger. Rhea stepped forward until she was 2 meters away. Up close, the girl smelled of ozone, sulfur, and old oil, like she'd crawled out of the throat of the planet itself. Identify yourself, Rhea said, voice sharp. How did you board this vessel? The girl's mouth twitched. Not a smile. A judgment. Our sensors detected nothing, Dr. Soren muttered, scanning her suit. That's impossible. The girl glanced at him like he was slow. Your sensors are looking for heat and electric heartbeats, she said. My suit is insulated with silicate weave, and my heat signature is looped into your hull exhaust. Rhea's eyes narrowed. You came from the surface. The girl shrugged. Where else would I come from? That world is uninhabited, Soren insisted. We scanned. Your scans are lazy, the girl cut in. Rhea's tail snapped once. Watch your tone. The girl stared at her without fear. Watch your clock. Rhea froze. The girl stepped closer, lowering her voice like she was sharing a secret. You're sitting in a geosynchronous orbit over the equatorial rift, she said. In about 10 minutes, the nightfall pulse hits. Rhea's stomach tightened. We detected no severe weather patterns. It's not weather, the girl whispered. It's the planet's heartbeat. She pointed up at the ceiling, as if she could see through metal and vacuum and storm. And it hates loud machines. Rhea didn't like the way the girl said it. Not like superstition. Not like fear. Like a mechanic describing a scheduled engine failure. The nightfall pulse, Rhea repeated, tasting the words as if they were poison. Explain. The girl, still standing barefoot in confidence while armed soldiers surrounded her, jerked her chin toward the corridor. Not here. Your ship is screaming. The pulse hears it. Dr. Soren frowned, his scanner whining softly as it tried to read her suit. You're saying the planet produces an electromagnetic event capable of disrupting a Fallery warship systems? The girl rolled her eyes. I'm saying it will. And if you keep your reactor hot, you won't just lose systems. She leaned forward, voice dropping. You'll fall. That single word landed heavier than a threat. Rhea's ears twitched, catching the subtle shift in the ship's hum. She'd spent her life inside vessels. She knew their language. The Starfang was stable, but something in the background felt wrong, like the air itself was tightening. She glanced at Dr. Soren. Readings. Soren lifted his datapad. The screen flickered once. I'm seeing a spike in background radiation. How long? It wasn't there a minute ago, he said, voice rising. It's climbing fast. The girl nodded like that proved her point. Told you. Rhea stared at her. You said US. How many people are on that planet? The girl's expression tightened, just for a heartbeat. A crack in her armor. My dad, she said. And the Bastion. The Bastion. Cass's voice crackled over the comm, still half disbelieving. Like, a settlement? A city, the girl corrected sharply. And your computer just told the sky to erase it. Rhea felt heat rise behind her eyes. Anger at the system, at the High Council, at herself for trusting a scan. But anger didn't solve physics. What's your name? Rhea demanded. The girl blinked, like she couldn't believe the Admiral was asking introductions during a countdown. Mira. Rhea nodded once. Mira. If you're lying, I will personally. You'll personally what? Mira snapped. File a complaint? Rhea's tail lashed. The guard stiffened. Mira didn't care. She turned and walked down the corridor as if she owned the ship. Hey! The squad leader barked, stepping after her. Stop! Mira ignored him, moving straight to a maintenance panel on the wall. She pulled a strange tuning fork-shaped tool from her belt and jammed it against the seam. Rhea watched, irritated. That panel is secured with biometric lock. Mira struck the tool against the metal. A high, clean vibration sang through the corridor. Not loud, precise. Inside the wall, tumblers clicked like bones shifting. The panel popped open. Dr. Soren's eyes widened. She opened it with sound. Mira reached in and yanked a bundle of wires. The corridor lights flickered. The low hum of the ship dipped. "I'm bypassing your external comm array," Mira said. "It's drawing too much power. It'll attract the lightning." "Stop," Rhea ordered, stepping forward. "You're damaging military property." "I'm saving your fancy cat shell," Mira shot back without looking. Rhea's eyes narrowed. "I am not a pet." Mira finally looked over her shoulder. "Then stop purring at your rules and look outside." Rhea turned toward the small airlock viewport. The atmosphere over Kuros Vale was changing. The bruised purple clouds began to glow, not like chaotic lightning, but like a ripple spreading through water. A wave of distortion rolled across the sky, bending starlight, warping the horizon. It was beautiful in the way disasters were beautiful. Too massive to stop, too precise to be random. Dr. Soren's datapad shrieked. "Energy surge detected," he yelled. "It's massive, electromagnetic, and gravitational. Space-time readings are warping. Our sensors are." The datapad sparked. Soren yelped, dropping it as smoke curled from the screen. Mira slammed the maintenance hatch shut and looked directly at Rhea. Her eyes were fierce now, desperate. "You have to shut down the main reactor," she said. "Auxiliary battery only. Analog controls. Cut the reactor now." Rhea's instincts screamed against it. Cutting main power meant dropping shields. Dropping shields in an unstable atmosphere was suicide. "That will make us vulnerable," Rhea said coldly. "If you keep shields up," Mira snapped, "the feedback loop will blow your generator. You'll die fancy." Rhea hesitated, one of the rarest things she ever did. Then the ship vibrated slightly, like it had been tapped by an invisible finger. A warning chime began to stutter through the corridor speakers. Mira stepped closer. Her voice softened, not less intense, just more human. "My dad is the best engineer in the sector," she said. "He says when the pulse knocks, you don't answer. You go quiet." Rhea stared into Mira's eyes and saw something she hadn't expected. Not manipulation, not fear. Certainty earned the hard way. Rhea snapped her comm open. "Bridge." Cass answered instantly. "Admiral." "Cut main power," Rhea ordered. "Scram the reactor. Now." Cass went silent for half a second. "Admiral will drop like a stone." "Do it." A heartbeat. Then Cass. "Aye, Admiral." The ship's hum died. Lights blinked out, replaced by dull red chemical strips along the floor. The corridor fell into a heavy, suffocating quiet. Even the air felt thicker without the reactor's vibration. Then, the nightfall pulse hit. It wasn't sound. It was pressure. A vibration slammed through the hull and into Rhea's bones, rattling her teeth. The ship groaned like a living creature being crushed. Metal screamed. Sparks erupted from ceiling panels like fiery rain. Gravity flickered. For one sickening second, Rhea floated inches above the deck, weightless, then slammed down as gravity snapped back twice as hard. The soldiers staggered. One hit the wall hard enough to dent his armor. Rifles whined, then died as their circuits fried. Dr. Soren's scanner went dark. The corridor filled with the smell of burnt wiring. And through it all, Mira held a handrail, eyes closed, counting softly like she'd done this 100 times. 3, she whispered. The ship shook again. 2, Rhea's heart hammered. She forced herself to stay standing. 1, the vibration abruptly eased, like a storm exhaling. Silence fell. Not peaceful silence. Survivor silence. Rhea swallowed hard. "Status." The squad leader's voice came strained. "Comms are dead. Internal sensors offline." Rhea looked at Mira. Mira opened her eyes and adjusted her suit. A faint blue glow pulsed from it. Bioluminescent strips, analog, immune to the pulse. She met Rhea's stare. "Welcome," Mira said quietly, "to the planet that hates liars." Rhea stared back, chest rising and falling, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Not fear, not anger, respect. Mira stepped closer, voice low. "Now about that no-life order." Rhea turned toward the corridor leading back to the bridge. the weight of command settling onto her shoulders like armor. For the first time in 20 years, Admiral Rhea Solarin wasn't under the clean control of the Accord. She was alone in the dark, with a child who had climbed into orbit to punch her conscience awake. The bridge of the Starfong felt like a tomb. Every holographic panel was dead. Every soft hum of advanced Valerie technology had vanished. The only light came from dim red chemical strips lining the floor, turning the polished metal corridors into something ancient and hostile. Admiral Rhea Solarin stepped onto the bridge and immediately felt the wrongness. A warship was not meant to be quiet. Cassrin sat at the helm with both hands gripping the manual yoke like it was the throat of a wild animal. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His usual grin was gone, replaced by tight focus. "I've got partial thruster response," Cass reported. "No sensors, no stabilization, no autopilot. We're flying blind." Rhea stood behind him, watching the dead screens. "Can you maintain orbit?" Cass gave a humorless laugh. "Maintain orbit? Admiral, we're a metal brick with a title." Dr. Soren staggered in behind her, clutching a useless datapad like a broken promise. The pulse stripped the ship clean. "We're running on auxiliary battery only. It's primitive." "Primitive keeps you alive," Mira said from the doorway. She'd followed them onto the bridge like she belonged there, her suit's faint blue glow making her look like a ghost pulled from the planet below. She pointed at the main viewport, where Kuros Vale churned beneath them. "You can't stay up here," Mira said. "The next pulse cycle will finish what the first started. It'll knock you down like a toy." Rhea's jaw tightened. "We are not landing on that world." Mira's stare didn't blink. "Then you're dying in orbit, and your sterilization order will still go through. Congratulations, you'll be dead and a murderer." Cass muttered, "Kid's got a talent for motivation." Rhea's ears flattened. She forced them upright. "Mira, you said there is a settlement." Mira nodded once. "The Bastion, underground. And you want us to take you there." "I need you to see it," Mira said. "Not read it, not scan it. See it. Because if you don't, you'll drift here until the Accord finds your wreck and calls it unfortunate." Rhea stared at the planet, her mind calculating the impossible math of her situation. The Starfong couldn't call for help. The Starfong couldn't send corrections. And the Accord, already hungry to sterilize, would not slow down for a ship that went silent. Rhea turned to Cass. "Can you give me a glide descent?" Cass blinked. "A what?" "A controlled fall," Rhea snapped. "Into the atmosphere. Low power. Manual." Cass stared at the dead instruments, then out at the storm-wrapped world. He swallowed. "I can glide a brick if I have to, but I need coordinates." Rhea looked at Mira. Mira's chin lifted. "I know the magnetic currents. I know the updrafts. I can guide you, but you have to promise something." Rhea's eyes narrowed. "What?" Mira's voice dropped. "When we reach my father, you don't shoot him. He doesn't like uniforms." Rhea forced her tone into calm authority. "If your father aids a vessel in distress, he has nothing to fear." Mira snorted. "That's the most uniform sentence I've ever heard." Rhea ignored the insult. "Cass, prepare descent." Cass exhaled slowly, fingers tightening on the manual controls. "Aye, Admiral." The Starfong dipped nose first. Outside the viewport, the bruised purple atmosphere rose to meet them like a living bruise. The ship began to shake as it hit the upper layers, the hull groaning under pressure. Cass fought the yoke. Air density is inconsistent. 1 second it's soup, the next it's vacuum. The ship lurched. Rhea's stomach flipped as gravity turned unpredictable. Her boots clanged against the deck as she braced. Mira stood behind Cass, watching the clouds like she was reading a map written in lightning. "Left," she said sharply. "Ride the current. Don't fight it." Cass swore. "I'm trusting a kid who climbed into orbit like a barnacle." Mira didn't blink. "Trust harder." The ship plunged deeper. The world beneath them came into view. A nightmare of vitrified land. Jagged obsidian sheets shattered by centuries of tectonic agony. Glass cliffs rose like teeth. The ground reflected the violet sky in broken shards, disorienting and cruel. There, Mira said, pointing. The equatorial rift. That crack. Go in. Cass stared. That's barely wide enough for the hull. Then don't miss, Mira replied. Cass gritted his teeth and banked hard. The Starfong screamed through the canyon entrance, thrusters flaring, hull scraping air so close it felt like the planet was trying to bite them. Rhea held her breath as the ship slid between glass walls sharp enough to slice metal. Then Cass killed forward velocity and dropped them like a stone. Landing gear slammed down with a heavy metallic thud. The ship bounced once, twice, then settled with a groan of hydraulics. Cass slumped back in his seat, breath shaking. We're down. He wiped his forehead. And I would like it noted on the record that I hate this planet. Noted, Rhea said. She stood, feeling the heavy gravity pull at her bones. Her tail twitched once, controlled, but tense. She turned to her crew. Landing party, Rhea ordered. Low-tech gear only. Kinetic weapons. Chemical lights. Anything with microchips stays behind. She faced Mira. Mira's eyes glittered with something dangerous. Hope mixed with fury. Good, Mira said. Now don't march. Rhea blinked. Explain. Mira pointed toward the glass ground beyond the ramp. This glass is piezoelectric. If you stomp in rhythm, you build charge. Enough charge. She paused, letting the threat hang. And the ground explodes under your feet. Rhea stared at the shimmering surface. A death world that could hear footsteps. A death world that punished patterns. She swallowed, then nodded once. Lead. Mira turned and began walking with a strange broken rhythm. Step, drag, step, step, pause. Like she was dancing with the planet itself. Rhea followed. And with every uneven step into the glass canyon, Admiral Rhea Solarin felt the universe shifting. Because she wasn't walking toward a settlement. She was walking toward the truth. The canyon swallowed them. Glass walls rose on both sides like jagged cathedral spires, reflecting the bruised violet sky in 1,000 fractured angles. The wind howled through narrow gaps, producing a high whistle that sounded almost like laughter. Rhea's boots clamped onto the slick surface with magnetic grip, each step careful, uneven, never rhythmic. Mira moved ahead without hesitation, her strange shuffle perfectly timed. Step, drag, step, step, pause. Rhea forced herself to copy it. Felt ridiculous, undignified, like an admiral being taught to walk by a child. But the first time one of her soldiers accidentally stepped in sync with another, two heavy boots landing together, the ground beneath them snapped with a faint electric crackle. Rhea froze instantly. Mira looked back, eyes sharp. Don't do that. The soldier swallowed hard, adjusting his stance. Rhea's voice cut through the comms. Single file, break cadence. No exceptions. They continued deeper into the rift. The light above narrowed until the sky became a thin wound of violet. The temperature dropped. The air tasted metallic even through filters, heavy with sulfur and old storms. Dr. Soren's voice came through, breath loud in his helmet. This geology is extraordinary. The silica density acts like an insulator. It could shield against electromagnetic scanning. So you could hide a settlement down here, Rhea murmured. Mira didn't look back. Not could. Did. The rift narrowed until they were walking single file between walls close enough to touch both sides at once. Rhea's ears flattened slightly, instinctively reading the claustrophobic space. Every sound echoed boots, breathing, the faint clink of gear. Then Mira stopped. Rhea raised her hand, signaling the team to halt. Weapons stayed low but ready. She stepped forward, scanning the area. There was nothing, just a sheer wall of black glass. No door, no seam, no visible hatch. Mira stood before the wall as if it were a familiar friend. Rhea's eyes narrowed. This is it. Mira pulled a small metallic hammer from her belt. She tapped the rock face. Ting, 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 ting. Then one final strike that sounded different. Thud. Mira tilted her head, listening. A moment later, the ground beneath them vibrated with a deep grinding sound. Slowly, impossibly, a section of the glass wall began to move. It slid backward, then sideways, revealing a circular tunnel lined with reinforced ceramic rings. Rhea stared. Camouflage so perfect it made Accord scanners look like toys. Mira glanced at her. Welcome to the foyer. The tunnel angled downward at a steep slope. Warm air drifted upward. Cool, scrubbed, and unmistakably alive. Rhea stepped inside, and the sound of the canyon wind died behind her as the hidden door sealed shut with a heavy, final grind. For the first time since landing, the world stopped screaming. The air pressure equalized with a sharp hiss. The scent changed: damp earth, recycled ozone, and something organic. Like moss, like growing things. Mira unclipped her mask and pulled it down. You can take your buckets off now. Air's scrubbed. Rhea hesitated, then disengaged her helmet seals. She inhaled. Clean air. Not the poisoned breath of a dead world. Life always left traces. Warmth, moisture, smell. Rhea felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. She had signed this planet as no life, and she was breathing proof that her report was wrong. Lights flickered on above them. Amber incandescents encased in wire cages, strung along the ceiling like old holiday decorations. The glow was soft, warm, almost intimate. Not the sterile white of military ships. Not the neon glare of modern cities. Human light. Rhea followed Mira down the tunnel, the slope steep enough to strain her legs. The deeper they went, the warmer it became. The hum of machinery grew louder, low and steady, like a distant heartbeat. At the bottom, the tunnel opened. Rhea stepped out and stopped dead. The cavern beyond was colossal. Stalactites hung from the ceiling hundreds of meters above, glittering faintly like teeth. The walls were reinforced with thick steel ribs bolted into stone. Massive copper pipes ran like arteries along the rock, venting steam in rhythmic bursts. Huge gears turned slowly in the distance, driving air circulators that rumbled like sleeping beasts. And in the center of it all was a structure that defied everything the Orphan Accord taught about survival. A city, not a camp, not a bunker, not a desperate shelter. A city built like an inverted hive, walkways suspended by thick cables, platforms welded from salvaged metal, ceramic bricks, and the bones of old starships. It was brutalist and industrial, but it had strength, purpose, and it was alive. Hundreds of people moved through it. Welders worked on a suspended platform, sparks raining down like golden fireflies. Mechanics hauled crates across gantries. Children ran between stacks of supplies, laughing in a way that felt illegal on a Deathworld. Vertical gardens climbed the cavern walls, rows of green plants glowing under ultraviolet lamps. Rhea's throat tightened. This wasn't survival. This was defiance. Dr. Soren whispered behind her, voice shaking with awe. By the stars. He took off his glasses, wiped them with his sleeve, and put them back on like the vision might disappear if he didn't anchor it. This is not a shelter, he breathed. This is a civilization. It's a bastion, Mira corrected, pride slipping into her voice. Class 4 tectonic anchor. We don't just hide in the hole. We reinforce it. Rhea slowly stepped onto the main gantry. The activity below began to slow. Heads turned. People looked up. Rhea felt their gaze like weight pressing down on her shoulders. She expected fear. She expected panic. Instead, she saw hardness. Men and women wiped grease from their hands and stared at her with eyes that didn't belong to victims. These weren't refugees. They were survivors who had learned the sky could lie. Rhea's tail twitched once. She forced it still. Mira waved at someone below. A woman with a prosthetic arm shouted up. Mira! You're late for shift change. Did you bring the capacitors? Mira grinned. Better. She threw her arms wide like she was presenting a prize. I brought a cat. Rhea stiffened instantly. I am an Admiral, she muttered. Mira leaned close, whispering like she was sharing wisdom. They don't care about your rank here. Rhea looked down at the bustling city, at the lights, at the gardens, at the children, and then she saw it. On the far wall, painted in crude red chemical spray, was the symbol of the Orphan Accord, 3 interlocked rings. but a jagged black line had been drawn through them, shattering the emblem. Underneath, in angry angular letters, "Remember the orbital sweep. Death to Corin Strada." Rhea's blood turned cold. She knew that name. High Executive Corin Strada, hero of the inner systems, pacifier of rebellions, face of order. Rhea stared at the graffiti as if it had teeth. Then she heard Mira's voice behind her, suddenly quieter. "He's the reason we live underground," Mira said. And before Rhea could ask what that meant, a heavy blast door on the far side of the cavern hissed. Steam vented violently, an iron will spun, and a man stepped through, tall, broad-shouldered, mechanic's jumpsuit stained with oil and rock dust, arms scarred with old burns, dark hair tied back, beard rough. In his right hand was a hydrospanner large enough to crush bone. He didn't look at Rhea first. He looked at Mira. His eyes scanned her in a single second, checking for injury, for fear, for anything that might mean the world had tried to take her. Then his gaze lifted, and landed on Admiral Rhea Solarin like a weapon locking on target. The cavern went quiet. Mira's voice shrank slightly. "Hey, Dad," she said. The man stepped forward, placing Mira behind him like a shield. And when he spoke, his voice carried through the bastion like thunder. "You brought a warship to my daughter's doorstep," he said. "Explain." Graham Rowe didn't shout. He didn't need to. His voice rolled through the cavern like a pressure change. Low, heavy, and dangerous. The bastion's people didn't flinch, but they did something just as telling. They stopped moving. Welders lowered their torches. Mechanics set tools down gently. Even the children froze mid-game, stones forgotten in their hands. It wasn't fear of punishment. It was respect for a man who carried their survival on his spine. Graham stepped forward. Mira tucked behind him like he was made of armor. The hydrospanner in his hand hung loose, but Rhea knew better than to mistake that for peace. That tool wasn't a wrench. It was a warning. Rhea met his stare without blinking. She had faced pirates, mutineers, and enemy admirals across blood-slick decks. She refused to be intimidated by a mechanic in a cave. "I am Admiral Rhea Solarin of the Fallery Royal Navy," she said, voice crisp. "I did not bring my warship to your daughter. Your daughter boarded my vessel without authorization." Mira peeked out from behind Graham's leg. "Technically, I hitched a ride." "Mira," Graham rumbled, without looking back. Mira shut up immediately. Rhea noted it. How the girl who talked back to an admiral like it was sport suddenly went quiet at one word from her father. Graham's eyes stayed on Rhea. "Your ship is in our sky." "My ship is disabled," Rhea replied. "The pulse damaged our reactor. We were forced to land." Graham took one more step closer, invading her personal space with deliberate intent. He smelled of engine grease, damp stone, and cold anger. "And before you landed," he said, "you marked the planet." Rhea didn't answer fast enough. That was the mistake. Graham's voice sharpened. "Class 15. No life. Sterilization protocols initiated." Dr. Soren stepped forward nervously. "Sir, the designation was based on scan results." "Your scans are worthless," Graham snapped. The words weren't emotional. They were factual, like he'd said it 100 times to 100 dead people who'd trusted machines over reality. Rhea's tail lashed once, the only crack in her discipline. "Control your tone." Graham's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "Control your sky." The tension snapped tighter. Rhea felt her guard stiffen. Fingers hovered near triggers. She lifted a hand, subtle, commanding restraint. This wasn't a battlefield. Not yet. Rhea forced her voice into steel. "We detected no life signatures. Because we know how to hide," Mira blurted, suddenly unable to hold it in. Her voice cracked with something raw beneath her confidence. "If we don't hide, the pulse kills us. If we do hide, you kill us." Graham didn't turn around, but his shoulders tightened, like her words had been shoved into his ribs. Rhea stared at Mira. For the first time, she saw the child underneath the bravado. The exhaustion in her eyes, the fear she'd been holding down with sarcasm and fury. Rhea swallowed. "How long have you been here?" Graham answered. 10 years underground. Ria's brow furrowed. 10 years? That would mean. Mira's voice went small. That would mean we were here before your scanners started lying. Graham's gaze burned. We were a colony, he said. We had permits, terraforming engines, a future. He gestured at the cavern city around them. Then your high executive wanted the sector, declared the colony failed, ordered a sweep. Ria's ears twitched. She recognized the term. Orbital sweep, a sterilization action meant for biohazard containment, dead colonies, contaminated research sites, plague zones. Not living families, not children. Dr. Soren whispered, horrified. That would be a war crime. Graham's grip tightened on the spanner until his knuckles whitened. My wife was in the upper comm tower, he said, broadcasting our surrender, trying to prove we were compliant. His voice didn't shake. That was worse. She didn't make it down. The bastion felt colder. Ria looked around at the city again, and the warm amber lights suddenly seemed like defiance against a nightmare. She saw the people, scarred hands, patched clothing, eyes too old. A civilization built from salvage and grief. On the wall, the graffiti screamed, remember the orbital sweep, like a scar that refused to heal. Ria forced herself to speak. If this is true, then the orphan charter was violated. Graham's laugh was dry, humorless. It's only a violation if there are witnesses. He leaned closer, and Strata made sure there were none. Ria's stomach twisted. Strata did this? Graham didn't blink. Strata ordered the sweep. Then he declared the planet dead. Class 15. No life. Mira's voice came out bitter. We became no life because it was the only way to keep the bombs from falling again. Ria felt her throat tighten. She'd spent her whole career believing the accord was harsh but necessary. Order to prevent chaos, rules to prevent extinction. But this wasn't order. This was convenience dressed as law. Before she could respond, static screamed from the comm unit on her belt, sharp enough to make everyone flinch. The sound echoed in the cavern like a dying animal. Cass's voice punched through, distorted but urgent. Admiral, come in. Ria grabbed the unit. I'm here. We have a transmission, Cass said. It's punching through on a high-band military frequency, directed at your command codes. Ria's blood went cold. From who? Cass hesitated, then said it. High Executive Strata. The cavern fell silent. Even the gears seemed to slow. Graham's face hardened into stone. Mira's eyes widened, fear returning like a wave. Ria looked at Graham for a fraction of a second, then clicked the comm to speaker. A smooth voice filled the bastion, cultured and terrifyingly calm. Admiral Solarin, Corin Strata said, as if he were speaking from a clean office instead of the edge of genocide. My deep space monitors detected your vessel's distress and the anomaly. I see you have logged a Class 15 designation. A pause. Excellent work. Ria's jaw tightened. Executive, my ship is disabled. I have made landfall. I have found. You have found a hazard, Strata interrupted smoothly. A hallucination induced by magnetic resonance. There is no colony. Graham's hand tightened on the spanner. Ria could feel his rage like heat. Strata continued. I am dispatching a recovery fleet to retrieve your crew. However, sterilization cannot be delayed. The planet's instability threatens navigation lanes. Ria's claws flexed unconsciously. You are ordered, Strata said, voice soft as poison, to confirm the no-life data packet immediately. Do not let sentiment cloud your duty. Confirm the data. End the mission. The transmission cut off with a final click. Ria stood frozen, comm unit still in her hand. The order was clear. Confirm the lie, or become the enemy. Graham's voice came quiet, deadly. So, he said, staring at her like a judge. Are you a soldier? He lifted his chin slightly. Or are you a butcher? The comm unit in Ria's hand felt heavier than her sidearm. It wasn't just metal and circuitry. It was a chain. A direct line back to the Orphan Accord. Back to rules written in distant clean rooms by people who never had to breathe toxic air or look into a child's eyes and admit they'd almost erased her. Rhea slowly lowered the device. Across from her, Graham Rowe didn't move. He didn't raise his wrench. He didn't shout. He simply watched her the way a man watches a storm approach his home, knowing he might not survive it, but refusing to blink. Mira stood behind him, clutching the edge of his jumpsuit with small fingers. Her earlier confidence had drained away. Now she looked like what she truly was. A kid who'd climbed into orbit because she had no other choice. Rhea inhaled. "The high executive is wrong," she said, voice tight. "This world is inhabited." Graham's eyes narrowed. "Then deny it." Rhea's jaw clenched. "If I deny it, I'm declaring mutiny." "Good," Graham said. "Welcome to being human." Rhea's ears flicked in irritation. "I am not human." "You will be," Graham replied coldly, "if you choose to grow a spine." The Bastion's people watched from platforms and gantries, pretending not to listen, but listening anyway. They had heard that voice. They knew what Strata meant. 48 hours. Sterilization. A countdown to extinction. Dr. Soren stepped closer to Rhea, voice low. "Admiral, if we send a correction now, after the sterilization order has been queued." "I know," Rhea snapped. She didn't mean to. The stress sharpened her words like claws. Soren flinched. Rhea forced herself to steady her tone. "Continue." Soren swallowed. "The high executive will claim falsified data. You could be court-martialed, stripped of rank, possibly executed." Graham's laugh was a single harsh sound. "So your options are die with honor or live with blood." Rhea stared at the comm unit again. For 20 years, her life had been simple. Obey, report, execute. Even when she hated an order, she followed it, because the Accord had convinced her that obedience was civilization. That without the rules, everything collapsed into chaos. But the Bastion wasn't chaos. It was order built from grit and survival. A city that existed only because people refused to die quietly. Rhea lifted her head. "I will not confirm the no-life packet." Mira's breath hitched. Graham didn't celebrate. He only nodded once, as if he'd expected nothing less, or was too tired to hope. Rhea continued, voice firm. "But I also cannot revoke it without a functioning comm array. My ship is blind." Graham stepped closer. "Then we fix it." Rhea's eyes narrowed. "My ship is Fallery military property. You won't have access to core systems." "I don't need access," Graham said. "I need time." Rhea's tail twitched. "Time we don't have." Graham pointed upward, toward the ceiling, toward the glass canyon miles above. "You said the pulse killed your comms." "Yes. And our city survives it," Graham said. "Because we don't fight it. We hide inside it." Rhea frowned slightly. "Explain." Graham's voice dropped, turning into the tone of an engineer explaining something that could kill you if you misunderstood it. "The pulse creates interference so thick it blinds surveillance grids. It's not just a storm. It's a window. A blind spot," Dr. Soren whispered, understanding. Graham nodded. "We call it the ghost window. When it peaks, the sky can't see." Rhea's eyes sharpened. "You're saying we could mask the Starfang inside the rift?" Graham's mouth twitched. "Now you're learning." Mira perked up slightly. "We can extend the dampening field," she said quickly. "We already use it to hide the Bastion from scans. If we tune it wide enough, your ship disappears too." Rhea stared at her. "A warship is not a small target." Mira shrugged. "Neither is a city. Yet here we are." Graham continued. "Strata's fleet will arrive looking for a dead ship and a dead planet. If your ship vanishes from his sensors, he'll assume you crashed. He'll declare you lost." Rhea's blood chilled. "He already did." Graham's eyes narrowed. "What?" Rhea turned to Cass's comm channel. "Cass, patch through the intercepted broadcast." Static hissed. Then Cass's voice. "Already in buffer, Admiral. Sending now." A screen on the Bastion command deck flickered to life, one of their crude analog monitors connected to a salvaged receiver. The image was grainy, but the voice was unmistakable. Corin Strata's face appeared. "Citizens of the Accord," Strata said smoothly. It is with heavy heart that I announce a tragedy. The Fallery vessel Starfang under Admiral Solarin has been lost with all hands. Rhea's claws flexed. Strata continued, calm as a knife. And the Admiral's final logs indicate a severe mental breakdown due to toxin exposure. The message ended. Silence followed. Graham stared at Rhea, his expression shifting from anger to something colder. "He's painting you insane," Graham said. "He's erasing me," Rhea whispered. Mira's voice trembled. "So even if you go back, they won't believe you." Rhea felt something inside her crack. Not her discipline, her loyalty. Strata wasn't just trying to sterilize Kuros Vale. He was sterilizing the truth. Graham stepped closer, voice low and fierce. "He thinks you're alone," he said. "A ghost admiral with no proof." Rhea lifted her chin. "Then we give him proof," she said. Graham's eyes glinted. "How loud?" Rhea's gaze hardened like forged steel. "So loud the galaxy can't pretend it didn't hear." The bastion changed as the next pulse approached. It didn't happen with alarms or flashing warnings. There were no automated sirens, no calm computer voices announcing doom. Instead, the entire city moved like a living organism sensing danger in the blood. The massive geothermal turbines slowed until their steady rumble faded into silence. Steam vents hissed shut. Workers secured tools with canvas straps. Heavy shutters rolled over garden lamps. The amber lights dimmed one by one, replaced by deep red chemstrips embedded in the floor, like veins lighting up beneath the metal. Rhea watched it all from the central gantry, hands gripping the cold railing. Back on her ship, silence meant failure. Here, silence meant survival. Below, families gathered into reinforced atriums. Children were guided into safe corridors with practiced calm. No screaming, no panic. It was choreography, rehearsed so many times it had become instinct. Graham Rowe stood on a raised platform near the main pressure seal, headset pressed to one ear. He didn't bark orders like a military officer. He spoke like a man who'd learned the hard way that fear wastes oxygen. "Section 4, lock the hydraulic pins," Graham rumbled. "Section 2, seal the heat valves, easy, don't force it. If you strip the thread, you die cold." People moved at his voice like it was gravity. Rhea found herself staring at him longer than she intended. He was rough, dirty, stubborn. Everything her academy training would label unrefined. But he carried the bastion like it was his spine. Every life in this hole a weight he refused to drop. Mira climbed up beside Rhea and leaned against the railing like she belonged there. She did. "You look tense," Mira said. "I am fine," Rhea replied automatically. Mira tilted her head. "That's what liars say right before the planet smacks them." Rhea's ears twitched. "Watch your mouth." Mira shrugged. "Watch your knees." Rhea frowned. "My knees." Mira pointed down. "You're stiff. You're locking up. Dad says if you fight the pulse, you break." Rhea's tail flicked. "I have endured maneuvers that would crush a human." Mira gave her a sideways look. "This isn't a human problem. This is a planet problem." Before Rhea could respond, Graham stepped up behind them. He didn't announce himself. He just appeared like a shadow. "Stop fighting the floor," he said. Rhea turned sharply. "Excuse me?" Graham didn't look at her face. He looked at her stance. "Your weight's wrong. Your knees are locked. Your tail's rigid." Rhea bristled. "That is a disciplined posture." "That's a posture for a parade," Graham said. "Not for resonance." He stepped closer and pressed his palm against the raw stone wall beside them. "Put your hand here." Rhea stared at him as if he'd asked her to kneel. "I beg your pardon?" Graham's eyes narrowed. "Admiral, either you learn or you become debris." Rhea hesitated, then placed her palm against the stone. It was cold. First she felt nothing. Then she felt it. A vibration so low it wasn't heard. It was felt. It traveled up her arm into her ribs, syncing with her heartbeat in an uncomfortable way. Thump, 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 pause. Rhea's breath caught. "It's rhythmic." Graham nodded. "The planet expands. The crust stretches. It's not chaos. It's a pattern." Rhea stared at her own hand on the wall, suddenly aware of how much she'd trusted screens and algorithms over reality. She'd never thought to listen to the ground. "It feels like," she whispered. "A heartbeat," Graham finished. Mira smirked. "Told you." Rhea shot her a glare, but it lacked its usual bite. Graham's voice lowered. "When the pulse peaks, the surface sensors lie. They see ghosts. That's when Strata sends troops." Rhea's eyes sharpened. "He attacks during the pulse?" "He's done it before," Graham said, jaw tight. "He doesn't care about casualties. He cares about silence." Rhea pulled her hand away from the wall slowly, as if she'd touched something sacred. "Then we prepare defenses." Graham nodded. "We already are." He turned to leave, then paused, glancing back at her. "You're still stiff," he said. Rhea lifted her chin. "I am not stiff." Graham's mouth twitched. "You're terrified." Rhea froze. For a heartbeat, she almost denied it. The words rose automatically: protocol, pride, rank. But then she looked down at the bastion, at the families, at the children, at the gardens growing under metal and stone. And she realized fear wasn't weakness. Fear was proof she still cared. "I am responsible," Rhea said quietly. "That's not the same thing." Graham studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded once. "Good." Mira leaned closer to Rhea, whispering loudly enough to be annoying. "That means he respects you." Rhea muttered, "I didn't ask." Mira grinned. "You didn't have to." The red chem lights pulsed faintly as the vibration in the walls grew stronger. The bastion went fully quiet. The planet's heartbeat rose. And in that silence, Rhea understood something she'd never learned in the Navy. Survival wasn't about control. It was about listening. The first sign of the attack wasn't an alarm. It was the bastion's stone heartbeat stuttering. A deeper tremor rolled through the cavern walls. Too sharp, too violent to be the planet's rhythm. Dust drifted from the ceiling in thin gray curtains. The red chem lights flickered like they were afraid. Graham's head snapped up. "That's not the pulse," he said. Then it came. A dull, ugly thud from far above, distinct from resonance, distinct from tectonic strain. A breaching charge. Rhea's ears flattened instinctively. Her hand went to her sidearm. Graham didn't reach for anything high-tech. He grabbed a heavy projectile shotgun from a wall rack and tossed Rhea a kinetic pistol, metal, spring-loaded, old-fashioned. Rhea caught it by reflex. The weight surprised her. No energy cell. No biometric lock. Just steel and intent. "What is this?" she demanded. "Something that still works when the sky hates microchips," Graham said. Another thud shook the ceiling. Mira's voice crackled through the analog shortwave. "Topside sentries confirm contact. Drop pods, hardened shells, anti-interference shielding." Rhea's stomach dropped. "He sent troops down during the pulse." "That's suicide," Dr. Soren whispered. Graham's eyes were dark. "Strata doesn't care how many men die. He cares how many witnesses disappear." The red lights dimmed further as the pulse intensified. The bastion's machinery went into full lockdown. Every sound sharpened. Every breath felt loud. Graham snapped commands into the acoustic tubes. Section 1. Seal the north corridor. Section 3. Trigger steam traps. Keep the kids in the lower atrium. People moved instantly. Not soldiers. Civilians. But their hands were steady. Their faces were hard. They didn't look like people waiting to be saved. They looked like people who had survived too many rescues. Rhea glanced at Graham. "Lead me to the breach." Graham's brow lifted slightly, surprise flickering. He'd expected hesitation. Orders. Demands. Instead, she was ready. "Maintenance tubes," he said. "We flank them." The tunnels were narrow, circular conduits meant for pipes and coolant lines. Rhea crawled on hands and knees behind Graham, her uniform scraping against metal. The space pressed in on her shoulders, forcing her tail to curl tight. Claustrophobic. Humiliating. Necessary. The bastion vibrated violently as the pulse climbed. Each tremor made the metal tube sing. Rhea's teeth clenched against the sound. "This is insane," she hissed. "Welcome to my life," Graham grunted, pushing forward. They reached a junction hatch. Graham stopped abruptly, raising a fist. Rhea froze. In the cramped space, her momentum carried her forward. She bumped into his back, chest pressing against him for a split second. Both of them stilled. Rhea pulled back sharply. Apologies. Graham didn't turn fully, but his voice softened, just slightly. Breathe. Panic uses oxygen. Before Rhea could respond, Cass's voice crackled faintly through her shortwave. Admiral, reading thermal spikes near your position. Then Mira cut in, too clear for the chaos. If you two are bonding, do it after we survive. Rhea's fur bristled. We are not bonding. Mira's tone turned serious instantly. 3 hostiles. Heavy armor. They're drilling the outer seal. Not lasers, diamond tools. They know about the dampening. Graham's jaw tightened. They're learning. He kicked the hatch open. They dropped into the upper foyer like falling knives. The room was shadowed, lit only by emergency strips. At the far end, the massive blast door glowed orange in a circle where drills bit through. Sparks showered inward like burning rain. The sound was a banshee scream of metal tearing. 3 figures stepped through the breach. Hulking troopers in matte black armor, helmets faceless, weapons heavy and brutal, belt-fed kinetic repeaters. Their movements were stiff, fighting the erratic gravity of the pulse. Clear the sector, the lead trooper shouted. Kill anything that moves. Graham moved first. He didn't fire. He threw a pressurized canister into the center of the room and shot it midair. The canister exploded into thick white foam, rapidly hardening. The troopers cursed, visors blinded. Now! Graham roared. Rhea became motion. She slid under wild gunfire, boots scraping metal. She closed the distance to the nearest trooper, kicked the back of his knee, and slammed the pistol but into his helmet seal. He dropped like a felled machine. Graham tackled the leader using the pulse itself. As the floor lurched, the trooper stumbled, gyros failing. Graham flipped him hard into the wall with a crash that shook dust loose. The third trooper turned toward Rhea and raised his weapon. Rhea stared down the barrel. She calculated. She would not make cover in time. Then the bastion answered. A massive gear dislodged from the ceiling and crashed down, missing Rhea by inches but slamming into the trooper's arm, pinning him to the bulkhead. His weapon clattered away. He screamed. Silence returned except for the pulse thrum and the trooper's ragged gasps. Rhea stepped forward, pistol raised. He's helpless, she said coldly. Enemy combatant. We can't secure prisoners. Graham's eyes flashed. He's a kid in a suit. Rhea's finger tightened on the trigger. Logic dictates. Logic doesn't hold the roof up, Graham snapped. He grabbed a steel pry bar and jammed it under the gear. Grab the other end. Rhea stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Grab it, Graham roared, voice cracking with fury. Or you're no better than Strata. The trooper whimpered. Rhea hesitated. Then she holstered her pistol and grabbed the bar. They heaved together, Fallery strength and human grit. The gear lifted an inch, then 2. Move! Graham shouted. The trooper scrambled free, clutching his mangled arm, collapsing in the corner. Graham let the gear drop with a thunderous slam. Rhea stood breathing hard, hands dirty with foam and grease. She looked at Graham. He was bleeding, exhausted, and still chose mercy. Why? She demanded. Graham wiped his face. His voice dropped low. Because I'm not afraid of dying, he said. I'm afraid of what Mira becomes if she watches me turn into a monster. Rhea stared at her own hands. For the first time, she realized the bastion wasn't just hiding from the sky. It was hiding from becoming what the sky wanted them to be. And in the shaking red light of the Deathworld, Rhea Solarin felt her loyalty shift again, away from protocol and toward people. After the breach was sealed and the foam hardened into a crude barrier, the bastion returned to its rhythm. Not calm, not safe, but controlled. People moved again. Tools returned to hands. Wounds were wrapped with cloth and grit. The injured trooper, young, pale, terrified, was dragged away under guard, not to be tortured, but to be kept alive. Rhea watched that part longer than she meant to. She had expected vengeance. Instead, she saw discipline without uniforms, humanity without law, and it unsettled her more than any battlefield ever had. Graham led her deeper into the bastion, away from the foyer and into what passed for their command center. A broad chamber reinforced with steel ribs, filled with analog dials, mechanical gauges, and salvaged radio equipment. It smelled like oil and hot metal. The air vibrated faintly with stored power. A city powered by stubbornness. Dr. Soren was already there, hunched over a table with Talia Creel, one of Ria's Valerie mechanics who'd survived the pulse and the descent. Talia's uniform was scorched and dirty now, rank markings smeared, but her eyes were bright with the fever of invention. On the table sat a device that didn't look like anything military. It was boxy and strange, brass and ceramic, carved stone cores wrapped in copper coils. It had horn-like amplifiers on the sides like a musical instrument built by someone who hated music. Ria stared. "What is that?" Dr. Soren looked up with the guilty excitement of a scientist who discovered a way to cheat physics. "Admiral, meet the prototype." Graham folded his arms. "We call it the echolith." Ria's ears twitched. "That sounds like superstition." "It's engineering," Graham corrected. "Old engineering." Talia tapped the ceramic core proudly. "Standard transmitters use digital waves. The pulse eats them. But this device records physical vibration, acoustic resonance, and converts it into a tectonic frequency signal." Dr. Soren added, voice warming. "It doesn't fight the storm. It becomes the storm." Ria's gaze narrowed. "And what exactly do you plan to transmit?" Graham stepped closer, stabbing a finger at the device. "Proof." Ria held his stare. "Proof isn't enough. Strata controls the narrative." "Not if the proof becomes permanent record," Graham said. He turned toward a battered monitor displaying an old Accord map, deep space relay points, ancient buoy networks. "The founder buoys," Dr. Soren murmured, understanding. Ria's eyes widened slightly. "Those archives are unalterable." "Exactly," Graham said. "Strata can rewrite reports. He can bury witnesses. But he can't delete founder logs. If we broadcast undeniable life signs during the ghost window, the buoys will log it as a Class 1 anomaly." Talia's tail flicked with excitement. "And once it's logged, the system automatically flags the planet as inhabited, sterilization order revoked by default protocol." Ria's pulse quickened. It was insane. It was brilliant. But she saw the flaw instantly. A life sign strong enough to punch through a planetary pulse would need a source. Graham nodded slowly. "A heartbeat." Ria stared at him. "You intend to use your own." "I'm the best candidate," Graham said without hesitation. "Strong rhythm, strong body, strong signal." "No." Mira's voice cut through the room like a blade. Everyone turned. Mira stood in the doorway, arms crossed, face hard in a way no 12-year-old should ever have to be. "You have arrhythmia," she said flatly. "Mom always said your heart skips when you're angry." Graham's expression tightened. "Mira, not now." "It is now," Mira snapped. "You're always trying to die first." Ria felt her chest tighten unexpectedly. Mira stepped forward, pointing at the echolith. "I'll do it." Graham's voice dropped into pure command. "Absolutely not." Mira's eyes burned. "I've grown up in the bastion. My rhythm matches the planet. I can handle the chamber during the pulse." "You're a child," Graham growled. Mira lifted her chin. "And I'm the one Strata tried to erase before he even knew my name." Silence hit the room. Even Ria couldn't find words. Because Mira was right. The first lie had already been signed. The first death sentence had already been written. And the only reason the bastion still breathed was because Mira had climbed into orbit like a stubborn miracle. Graham looked like he'd been punched. He stared at his daughter, at the stubborn set of her jaw, the fear hidden behind rage, the courage forced into existence by cruelty. Then he exhaled, long and defeated. "You're stubborn," he muttered. Mira's mouth twitched. "I get it from you." Graham closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, his gaze was sharp and focused. "Fine," he said. But the chamber is reinforced. Triple harness. And you don't move an inch without my hand on the lock. Mira nodded once, satisfied. Rhea found herself staring at them. Father and daughter. A bond forged in darkness and survival. She had spent her life serving an accord that claimed it protected the galaxy. But here, protection was real. Physical. Bloody. Personal. Graham turned to Rhea. We still have one problem. Rhea lifted her chin. Strata. He won't come down, Graham said. If his flagship stays too high, the signal may wash out. Rhea's eyes sharpened. Then we bring him down. Graham studied her. How? Rhea's voice turned cold. He wants my signature. My surrender. My obedience. She stepped closer, claws flexing slightly. Then I give him what he expects. Mira blinked. You're gonna surrender? Rhea looked at her. No. She looked back at Graham. I'm going to lure him. Graham's mouth twitched into something almost like a smile, wolfish, dangerous. You'll be bait, he said. Rhea's eyes didn't flinch. I've been bait my whole career. I just didn't know it. And for the first time since entering the bastion, Graham's gaze softened. Not fully, not gently, but enough to reveal something underneath the anger. Respect. Then don't get captured, he said quietly. Rhea held his stare. I don't intend to. Mira sighed dramatically. Great. Two stubborn adults risking their lives. This is why planets hate loud noises. Rhea almost smiled. Almost. Because the plan was set. And the next time the sky pulsed, they wouldn't hide. They would scream back. The air tasted like metal. Even inside the bastion, even behind scrubbers and reinforced seals, the coming pulse left its signature in the throat, dry, sharp, electric. The walls hummed louder now, the planet's heartbeat rising toward its peak. Rhea stood in the airlock preparation room, adjusting the strap across her shoulder armor. Her uniform was no longer pristine. Dust stained the fabric. Scuffs marked the plating. But she refused to clean them. Let Strata see what survival looked like. Graham entered without knocking, shotgun slung over his shoulder. He moved like a man who'd spent his life listening for disaster. His eyes flicked over Rhea, gear check, posture check, breathing check. You don't have to do this part alone, he said. Rhea didn't look up. If he sees soldiers, he'll suspect a trap. Graham stepped closer. Then I'll stand far enough away to pretend I'm not worried. Rhea finally met his gaze. You're not worried. Graham's mouth twitched. Sure. He reached out and adjusted a twisted strap on her armor. His knuckles brushed the side of her neck. Brief contact, accidental, but it sent a jolt through her like static. Rhea stiffened. Graham noticed. His hand fell away. I don't like you out there exposed, he murmured. I am not your crew, Rhea replied softly. Graham's eyes held hers. No, he said. You're worse. Rhea blinked. Worse? You're the only one who can make them listen, Graham said, voice rough. And I've gotten used to having you around. The words landed heavier than any confession. Rhea's throat tightened. She had lived her life surrounded by ranks and protocols. Compliments were medals. Trust was paperwork. But this was real. Before she could answer, a vent grate above them rattled. Mira dropped down like a gremlin with a mission, landing lightly on her feet. She looked between them with exaggerated exhaustion. Oh, for the stars' sake, she groaned. Just kiss already. Graham's face went red under the grime. Mira, we have a timeline, Mira said, cutting him off. The pulse is building. The chamber's prepped. You two can stare into each other's tragic eyes later. Rhea cleared her throat sharply. The child is correct. We have a schedule. Mira smirked. Finally, the cat admits I'm right. Rhea's ears warmed. Lead me to the surface relay. Mira saluted lazily. Yes, Admiral Drama. Minutes later, Rhea stood on the jagged ridge above the canyon. The wind whipped her cloak hard enough to snap. Glass dust swirled around her boots like ash. Above her, the sky was a bruised purple wound, clouds spinning as if the planet itself was gathering breath. She held a low-tech transmitter, Analog, crude, reliable. Rhea took one steady inhale. Then she spoke into the storm. "High Executive Strata," she said. "This is Admiral Solarin." The wind stole part of her words, but the device carried enough. "I am done. My crew is dying. I am ready to sign." Silence. Then the response came, smooth, immediate, satisfied. "A wise choice," Strata said. "I am lowering the Aegis to receive your surrender. Do not attempt deception. My scanners are locked on your biosignature." Rhea's heart hammered. She kept her voice calm. "I am alone." "Excellent," Strata replied. "Remain where you are." Rhea looked up. Through the clouds, a shape descended. The Aegis. Strata's flagship was a silver-white behemoth bristling with weapon batteries. It moved like a god lowering itself to inspect insects. It hovered above the rift, its shadow swallowing the canyon. Rhea's claws flexed. It was working. She tapped 3 times on her receiver. Graham's signal code. Target in range. But then the Aegis stopped. Too high. Hovering at 30,000 feet. Above the resonance well, above the trap range, but low enough to threaten everything. Strata's voice returned, amused. "Did you truly think I would bring my command ship into a tectonically unstable rift during a pulse cycle?" he asked softly. "I may be a politician, Admiral, but I read engineering reports." Rhea froze. "Executive! I know about the device," Strata interrupted. The amusement vanished. Cold steel replaced it. "I know about the ceramic recorder. I know about the girl." Rhea's blood went ice. "How?" Strata's voice was almost gentle. "Your pilot Cass-Ren still wears a Fallery biomonitor. We hacked it an hour ago." Rhea's breath caught. "We've been listening," Strata continued, "to your entire planning session." Rhea's hand went to her ear instinctively. "Cass. Tiny mistake. A single piece of tech left active. And Strata had turned it into a knife." Rhea's voice cracked for the first time. "Cass, cut your feed now." "Too late." Strata's tone sharpened. "I do not need to come down there. I only need to break the one thing holding that resistance together." A pause. "The engineer holds the line because of the daughter," Strata said. "You fight because of the engineer." Rhea's stomach dropped. Then Strata spoke the words that turned the world into fire. "Drop squads, initiate." From the belly of the Aegis, black specks rained down. Not heavy troopers. Not clumsy pods. Sleek attack shells, hunter-killers. They weren't aiming for Rhea. They were aiming for the bastion vents. Rhea screamed into her transmitter. "Graham, it's a trap. He knows. He's coming for Mira." Static swallowed her words. Then the ridge shook. Explosions bloomed in the canyon like violent flowers. The bastion's hidden entrance, its sacred secrecy, was being ripped open by precision force. Rhea's lungs burned as she turned and ran. She didn't think. She didn't plan. She sprinted down the glass rift with broken steps, boots slipping, wind screaming. Because the sky wasn't trying to kill a city anymore. It was trying to kill one child. And if Mira died, the bastion died. Graham died. And whatever fragile piece of Rhea's heart had begun to awaken in the dark would die with them. The bastion became a war drum. Explosions rolled through the upper levels, shaking dust loose in choking waves. The red chemlights strobed like a dying heartbeat. Somewhere above, metal screamed as hunter-killer pods drilled through rock and glass with surgical cruelty. Rhea burst into the main plaza, chest heaving, claws flexing. The city she'd seen as wonder hours ago now looked like a battlefield. Smoke curling from broken vents, people running in disciplined lines, not panicking, but moving like they'd practiced for this nightmare in their sleep. Because they had. Mira's voice cracked through the short wave, no longer teasing. They breached the northern ventilation gate. "Dad's heading to the chamber." Rhea ran harder. She followed the sound of gunfire, kinetic cracks, steam blasts, the brutal clang of analog traps being triggered. Bastion defenders fought with whatever they had. Projectile rifles, wrenches, sharpened metal rods. But the hunter-killers were different. Fast. Clever. equipped with cloaking fields and thermal blades that glowed white-hot in the red gloom. They didn't storm like soldiers. They hunted like predators. Graham Rowe was already moving. Rhea caught a glimpse of him in a corridor. Jumpsuit torn, shotgun in hand, face smeared with blood and soot. He didn't fight like an officer. He fought like a man who knew every inch of his home. A hunter-killer materialized out of thin air ahead of him, blade swinging for his throat. Graham didn't dodge. He slammed his shotgun but against the wall, activating a hidden lever. The floor dropped away. The assassin fell with a shriek into a vertical or chute, tumbling down into the crushing gears below. Graham roared at his people, voice carrying through smoke. Know the ground. Use the rock. He turned the bastion into a weapon. Steam pipes burst, scalding invisible enemies into visibility. Gravity traps dumped killers into dead ends. Acoustic dampeners disoriented their sensors. The tunnels fought back. But the hunter commander was smarter. He didn't engage. He slipped through the chaos with a satchel charge, straight toward the resonance chamber. Rhea saw him, just a flicker of black armor disappearing around a corner. Graham! She shouted. He turned, eyes widening when he saw her. For a heartbeat, relief flashed across his face like sunlight. Then it was gone, because the ceiling above them groaned. A support beam, severed by thermal charge, tilted downward with a tortured metallic shriek. Under it, a family was trapped. A mother, eyes wide with terror. 2 children pressed against her sides, too shocked to cry. The beam buckled. It was about to crush them. At the far end of the corridor, the hunter commander hesitated, then sprinted away. Graham raised his shotgun. He had a clean shot. If he fired, he could stop the bomb. Stop the raid. Save Mira. But then the beam shifted again, and the children screamed. Rhea watched Graham's face. A split second stretched into eternity, where logic screamed, kill the threat. But Graham didn't move like a soldier. He moved like a father. He threw his shotgun down. He lunged for the beam. He jammed his shoulder under it just as it collapsed, muscles straining, veins bulging. The weight was monstrous. Tons of reinforced steel pressing down like the sky itself. Graham roared, voice tearing through the corridor. Get them out! Rhea didn't hesitate. She darted under the beam, grabbed the first child, then the second, dragging them free. The mother crawled out after them, sobbing. The beam sagged further. Graham's knees buckled. Rhea yanked a hydraulic jack from a nearby maintenance cart, slammed it under the beam, and cranked it hard. The jack caught the weight with a violent groan. Graham collapsed to his knees, gasping. He looked up, eyes wild. The bomber! He's going for the chamber, Rhea snapped. They ran. Smoke thickened. The pulse vibration rose again, making the walls tremble like they were afraid. They reached the resonance chamber. The door was blasted open. Talia lay on the floor unconscious, blood streaking her temple. And in the center of the room, Mira, strapped into the echolith harness, eyes wide, breathing fast but steady. The hunter commander stood over the device, satchel charge wired into its core. His thermal blade glowed in his hand. Step back, he ordered, or I blow the girl and the machine to dust. Graham froze like he'd been stabbed. Rhea raised her pistol, but her finger wouldn't pull the trigger. If she fired, the charge could detonate. Mira would die. The commander's voice was cold. Strata sends his regards. Then the chamber began to vibrate. Not from the bomb. From the planet. The nightfall pulse hit its absolute peak. The echolith tuned itself to the planet's frequency. And screamed. The brass horns flared. A wave of pure acoustic resonance exploded outward. It wasn't heard. It was felt. Thump, thump, thump. Mira's heartbeat amplified into a weapon. The commander staggered as his armor resonated violently. His visor cracked. He screamed, clutching his helmet as the sonic pressure shattered his balance. Now! Mira yelled. Rhea fired once, clean, precise, through the commander's chest plate. He dropped. Graham kicked the detonator away, sending it skittering down the corridor where it exploded harmlessly. Dr. Soren crawled from behind a control panel, eyes wide with disbelief. The signal. He checked the analog gauges. His voice shook. It went out. The pulse carried it. Mira's breath hitched. Did they hear us? Dr. Soren's grin was wild. The founder buoys are lighting up. Outside, the Aegis hovered in the storm. And somewhere in the deep, ancient network of the Accord, the galaxy heard a heartbeat from a world declared dead. Proof. Undeniable. Unstoppable. Rhea stared at Mira, then at Graham. For the first time since she signed the report, she felt hope sharpen into something dangerous. Because Strata had failed to erase them. And now, he had no choice but to come closer. Graham's eyes lifted, fierce and hungry. We can't just defend anymore, he said. Rhea's tail lashed slowly, controlled fury. As long as his ship is in our sky, she said. We're waiting to die. Graham stepped toward her, voice low. Then let's go break his teeth. Rhea didn't hesitate. She offered her hand. He took it, and the Bastion prepared to climb into the sky. The sky over Kuros Vale didn't calm. It listened. The nightfall pulse faded into a low, distant hum, like the planet had finally exhaled after screaming its truth into the void. In the Bastion, people moved through the aftermath with exhausted precision. Patching walls, carrying the wounded, resealing tunnels torn open by Strata's hunters. But something had changed. Not in the stone. In the air. Because now the Bastion wasn't invisible anymore. It was witnessed. In the days that followed, transmissions arrived like thunder, sector patrols, Accord observers, emergency tribunals. The founder buoy logs had forced the system's hand. Kuros Vale was flagged as inhabited, protected under sanctuary law. Sterilization protocols were automatically revoked, then locked under investigation. Strata's narrative collapsed. A hero couldn't erase a heartbeat recorded in the bones of history. Rhea stood on the upper observation deck, her arm in a sling, bruises blooming under her fur. Her uniform was gone. In its place she wore a simple tunic, civilian cloth that felt strange against skin that had always lived inside armor. Below her, the glass canyon reflected a calmer twilight. The planet still looked brutal, still looked broken. But now she could see it differently. Not as a corpse, as a fortress. Graham Rowe joined her at the railing, quiet as ever. His shoulder was bandaged. His hands were scraped raw. But he stood like the Bastion itself, scarred, unbent. They're rewriting the Class 15 protocols, he said. Rhea's ears flicked. Good. Graham hesitated, then spoke again, voice lower. There's more. Rhea turned slightly. What? Graham's jaw tightened. The pulse, it isn't natural. The logs show it's a defense grid. A planetary shield designed to scramble targeting systems. Rhea stared. A shield. Graham nodded once. And the key to controlling it is genetic. A biorhythm marker. Rhea's gaze drifted toward the lower platforms where Mira was laughing, arguing with mechanics twice her size like she owned the place. Realization struck like lightning. Mira, Rhea whispered. Graham's voice softened. Her mother carried the marker. Mira inherited it. Rhea swallowed. So her heartbeat wasn't just proof of life. No, Graham said. It was a command. Rhea stared at the sky. She told the planet to stand down. Silence stretched between them, no longer heavy, but warm. Then Graham spoke again, quieter than before. I need to tell you something, he said. Mira boarding your ship wasn't random. Rhea's eyes narrowed. I assumed as much. Graham met her gaze. I sent her. We needed a Fallery Admiral to sign the designation. An ancient clause. Only then does a false genocide order trigger automatic tribunal. Rhea's tail stilled. You used me, she said. Yes, Graham admitted. And I'm sorry. Rhea studied him for a long moment. She thought of anger, of betrayal, of everything she should feel. Then she thought of Graham holding up a collapsing beam to save children, of him sparing an enemy, of him choosing humanity every time the easy path was cruelty. You placed a wager on my character, Rhea said. Graham's throat tightened. I did. Rhea stepped closer until her hand rested against his chest. She felt the steady rhythm beneath her palm. "Did you win?" she asked softly. Graham's eyes shone. "I won everything." Rhea exhaled, slow, sure. "My ship needs a new chief engineer," she said. "And I intend to find every other dead world the Accord has lied about." Graham blinked. "Are you offering me a job?" Rhea's mouth curved into a true smile, fangs and all. "I'm offering you a complication," she said. Graham's laugh broke out, rough and real. Then he leaned in and she met him halfway. It wasn't a fairy tale kiss. It was the kiss of survivors. And beneath the glass and storms, the bastion hummed with life. No longer hidden, no longer silent, finally seen.